When you're registering your business, it's a good time to think about the government accounts that you'll need to operate your business. There are really 4 types of accounts that we register for folks. And I'd like to describe each of them because it's very important that you think about these things in advance. In some cases, they are requirements. In some cases, it's optional for you. But again, we want you to understand the advantages of opening some of these accounts. So the most common one that we're all familiar with, fortunately or unfortunately, is tax or GST, HST. When you register a business, you are then able to open a GST, HST account. It is not a requirement until you reach $30,000 of revenue on an annual basis. In fact, it's on a rolling 4-quarter basis, but the point is, if you're doing $30,000 of revenue or sales on an annualized basis, you do have to charge HST or GST, depending on your jurisdiction. Now, when you're charging GST and HST, some folks, when they're first setting up their business, are concerned that that makes their offering more expensive. And it does, it adds the tax. But most businesses must charge tax, and we're all accustomed to paying it. In fact, we think that when you have a HST, GST number, it gives more credibility to your business. It does make you look larger, or large if you are over 30,000. So give serious thought to opening a GST, HST account, not only for the reasons that I've just mentioned, but also for a clear financial reason. That financial reason relates to what we call input tax credits. And very simply, you will be charging folks HST or GST, but of course that's not for you. It needs to be remitted to the government. But you are also paying GST, HST on all of your business expenses, and especially in the early years when you're buying equipment or outlaying perhaps even more than you might in a normal year, you're being charged a fair bit of GST, HST. And very simply, the amount of HST that you have collected is over here, and the amount that you've paid out is over here on your expenses. And what happens when it comes time to remitting this HST or GST, in fact, what you'll do is you'll reduce this amount that you collected by the amount that you have paid out. Those are called input tax credits. So $1,000 of GST or HST charged, and if you have $300 of input tax credits, you would end up sending to the government the difference, $700. I did the math. Another very important government account that you must register at the time you set up your business is the payroll account. The payroll account is where you withhold income tax from employees of your company. Whether you're a sole proprietor, a partner or a partnership, or a corporation, you may have employees. And we'll discuss specifically whether or not you are an employee in just a minute. But consider the sole proprietor or the partnership. Other people that are employees of your company, you will be withholding income tax from their pay. This is something that the government will help you to calculate based on the size of their income and other variables. But whatever that amount is, you do reduce their pay by the income tax that you're withholding. And you'll remit it at whatever remitting schedule you've arranged. Canada Pension Plan contributions are also withheld from the person's pay, and your contribution to CPP as well all ends up going into that payroll account. The time at which you collect that withholding from the employee, you've really taken a sum of money that you are responsible for remitting to the government. And I stress this because for some small businesses, they temporarily use that money as cash flow, and that's not acceptable. If you're late or use the funds that you have withheld for anything other than remitting to the government, it's serious business, and we don't recommend that you do that. Withhold and remit. It's that simple. Now, who is an employee? Obviously, you'll know that if you've employed people in your business, they are employees and they must be recognized as such. You could have someone that is contracting their services to you and is providing some sort of service or other business support to you. They may have their own business and they may not be an employee. And of course, in that case, you won't do any withholding. If you are a corporation and you plan to get money from the corporation, which is the only way you will be paid, is if you are in fact an employee of your own corporation. And there are a lot of advantages of being a corporation, and there are advantages to being your own employee of that corporation. But the bottom line is, if you have a corporation, you do need at least that one payroll account for yourself. Import-export is an account that often people don't bother to open or think about until they really need it. The bottom line with an import-export number that's also issued by CRA, we give you your number right away, but again, you will receive from CRA the official notice that you have an import-export number, is when goods are leaving the country or coming into the country, the import-export number speeds up that process. It is not mandatory, however, we strongly recommend that you have it. It is mandatory in a sense if you want to handle imports and exports more efficiently. Regardless, if you don't have an import-export number and you go to move goods to or from our country, it will be more difficult, and often things can be held up at the border when you haven't in advance opened an import-export number. Finally, there's the WSIB, or Workman's Comp, as many people know it. It is a requirement that if you have employees, that you must pay WSIB premiums to cover your employees. The amount of that premium ranges from a very small percentage to up to in the 15% and more range. And the reason it's a range is because the risk factors in your business determine what the likelihood of accidents and how severe those accidents would be. If you're a pole climber, a lumberjack, a window washer, those employees will attract a very high premium from WSIB. Most office-related work, it's a very small amount, but it is a requirement if you have employees.